Hello, my friend. Welcome back to the Mindset Check podcast. This is your host, Misha McKittrick. This is a podcast where we believe that as you take time for a mindset check, you have more power than you think you do. And where we also believe that the true spirit of Christmas lies in your heart. We are going to break this down today. You know that. What does that really mean? And what does it mean to really keep Christmas in our heart? How is Christmas different and our lives different when we keep, quote, Christmas in our heart? That's what we're going to talk about. I'm so excited to jump into that with you. Before we get started, I want to remind you that I'm putting out there an offer to work with me personally, one-on-one. And that is in conjunction with taking my Heart Sync course, which will soon be available for any of you to purchase. And that's something that you can just go through and work through on your own. 6 weeks of course material, and then also meditations to help you learn how to figure out heart coherence. It's an incredible program. The offer that I'm referring to right now is being able to work with me one-on-one while you're also going through that course material. My clients that have worked with me in the past one-on-one have had incredible breakthroughs with their time one-on-one as we're going through the course material, and then we're able to work through things together. My clients have so many breakthroughs, and that's something that I want to continue to offer as long as I can. I foresee the future becoming too much, of one-on-one, which is why I'm only offering it to 3 people at this time. But if you want to jump in and work with me one-on-one while you're also going through being able to learn heart coherence and through that course material, starting to be in that conversation of the things that I teach and that I really dive into inside of the mind and heart coaching that I do. If that is something that's calling to you, reach out to me. This is something that I will be focusing on in the beginning of the new year, which is a great time for you to just get that recharge and to reinstill your beliefs about what your upcoming year will be like. So if you're interested in that, reach out. And without further ado, let's jump in. Let's jump into today's episode, which I'm super excited. Literally, I've decided to just push pause on the things that we've been talking about because I find it very hard to be in the midst of Christmas and to be focusing on, I want to push pause on all media myself and just partake in Christmas. And I don't know if that's how you feel too, but if it is, then we are in sync. And I'm so glad that you're here because I'm hoping to take your Christmas, especially your movie watching today, to a different level. Because there's a really big theme at Christmas time with movies and the messages that we receive from movies and the way that that affects our perspective. So I thought it would be fun and even powerful to take a look at them, some of them individually, and how they relate to each other and to us and what our takeaway is. I think when we ponder these things or when we really kind of dive in, we go, oh my word, I totally missed, I missed that. Or you're able to absorb it more and therefore take it into your life to really use it, to apply it, and subsequently to be able to experience a deeper, more rich and meaningful holiday season. That's what our aim is today. So let's see what we can do about that. Before we dive into some of these Christmas movies and Christmas themes that the movies carry, I want to share with you a little bit. We've talked about this before, how important sharing our stories are to me. It's very important that I share my story, that I'm learning from sharing my story, and that you are learning by absorbing whatever it is that you are receiving on your end. That's really important to me. It's important for me to absorb other people's stories in my life. People that are strangers to me, people that I know, people, just all the way around the board. It's such a cultural thing when you look into, Hawaiian cultures or you look into African cultures or Indian culture. They sit and they tell story. They talk story. They have storytellers. They have people who are assigned in their tribe to be able to do that. And they even measure each other's mental states by asking when was the last time they told story? I love the idea of telling story and what it does for us in our life. And there was something I was reading that Joe Dispenza had been working on. And you also would know if you're following me and if you're listening to the podcast that Joe Dispenza is someone that I just devour his work. I love the things that he's studying and the results that he's finding and the possibilities that he's truly just opening our mind to. And here's a quote from him that I want to share with you. It says, this is around what they're studying. He says, when we learn about someone else's transformation and can connect it to our own understanding and experience, we're connecting to the possibility of our own personal transformation. So he's essentially going over and sharing that when people share their transformational story, all of a sudden it plants a seed of possibility for someone else in their mind. And then whatever it is that they are trying to, experience or to heal from or, any of the above becomes more possible because of the previous person's testimony that was shared and the depth of, how deeply they resonate with what was shared. And so I like this angle that our stories, no matter if we're trying to experience miraculous things or, being healed from something or really just being able to find a different state for us to dwell in inside of us. When we learn about the way that somebody else is experiencing it, all of a sudden our brain goes, oh, so that's possible. And that's why I want to take apart what happens in some of my favorite Christmas movies, because they all have these deep underlying messages, even ones that are just very, very fun, okay? Like Elf. In Elf, there's this oversized elf that thinks he's an elf, and then he finds out he's a human, Buddy, and he works his way into our heart, right? He not only works his way into the heart of the viewer, but he ends up learning of his long lost family, and he works his way into their hearts also by just going and being himself and loving and playing and being. And I love Buddy's perspective when he says there's room for everyone on the nice list, right? And I love the way that he has this belief in his dad who has become a very resigned and cynical person. And he's been, very off put by his family. He's not close and connected with them. He's neglecting them, in fact. And he's not even checked into like the Christmas spirit, the Christmas season. And it's pretty impressive to watch the change in his dad and in lots of people's hearts in this movie, to shifting into holding the Christmas season and allowing that Christmas spirit to soar, right? And also, if you think about not just the Christmas spirit, but subsequent success, right? Because after his dad checks into this, he ends up having great success with his children's books, right? When they then publish these books about Buddy the Elf, and when he decides to check into what's really important, then he has all of these amazing things happen. Let that percolate in your mind as we move on. In Home Alone, there is the tale of Kevin McAllister, right? Kevin! He's left alone by his family, and he's left to sort of outwit these, what are they, the wet bandits, I think they call themselves, where they turn on the water every single time they burglarize a house. And he decides he needs to defend his house, and it's hilarious the way that he does it. And in the meantime, he connects a little more deeply with his neighbor, and this guy that his brother has planted into his mind as Old Man Marley, and that he is a very, he's a serial killer and whatever. He ends up connecting with this guy, and helping him see that your heart might still be broken, but it isn't gone. If it was gone, you wouldn't be this nice. So he ends up having this transformation with this neighbor. And then at the end of the movie, the neighbor who hadn't talked to his child forever ends up reconnecting with them on Christmas. And then another theme that's going on in the movie is really that he cares so deeply for his family, and that his family, cares for him. Whereas before it was like a lot of teasing and fighting, and, once they're separated from each other, Kevin ends up telling the Santa that he knows is the fake Santa to deliver a message to the real Santa that says, "This is really important. Will you please tell Santa that instead of presents this year, I just want my family back?" And it's kind of this story of recalling all of the mean, right, that they have with each other, to then just desire to be with each other. And just a message of family that deeply, the mother deeply is trying to get home and to be with her son. She can't believe she left him alone and on Christmas, and he's so young, and how will he do? And it is just such a heartwarming reminder of really finding love and trying to appreciate the things like our family that sometimes we take for granted because it's right in front of us all of the time. So I love looking at those transformations in that movie. Then another one is Scrooge, right? Or the Christmas Carol and all the different, spin-offs of that story. This one, I went to a play this year called A Christmas Carol, right? It was a really beautiful rendition of A Christmas Carol, and it was incredibly touching to me. It was fantastic how cynical and mean and grudging, and man, Ebenezer Scrooge is just he's just counting every dollar and is so tight-fisted and is just has no patience for people or love in his heart at all. And then the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future come and visit him. And the way that they are able to teach him and show him things that he had been unable to see, that his heart was not open to. And being able to be a fly on the wall in his past and in the present, and of course what will happen in the future, like if he doesn't change, it becomes so jarring to him. He's so tortured by it. The most redeeming part of the play was a line that said his life lay before him and it could be changed. And he had that realization so deep. And when he woke up, it was Christmas morning and he hadn't missed it. And he effectively goes about his day truly keeping Christmas in his heart. When he gets to Tiny Tim, and Tiny Tim says the famous line, "God bless us, everyone," right? And he went to his cousin's house and kept Christmas with them, and he upped the wages of Cratchit. I think it's Cratchit, Tiny Tim's dad. Oh my word. It's just everything changes, and because he's able to be more giving, more comes to him. And it's a better way to live, to walk around with a smile on your face, to help people, to love people. And he has so much power to be able to do it. It's very motivating when you're looking at the scenes that are playing out, and he is seeing what happened for him in that boy's home, and you at the same time are seeing something that happened for you when you were the same age, right? There's things that play out in your mind at the same time, and you're able to process and learn something that maybe you weren't able to see, but because he's seeing it, you're also seeing it. It's fascinating to me. I love it. And then how about the Grinch? How the Grinch Stole Christmas. And there are quite a few spin-offs of this movie as well, right? The original old cartoon, and then, all of the newer versions. Dr. Seuss is a master and has this poetic wisdom around what was created in this story. And I love the transformation of a person who was literally left out of Christmas, grew up in orphanage, didn't feel love around Christmas. And then the Who's from Whoville take him in and love him. And his heart grows 3 sizes. Can you imagine? It's really a feeling. We know that your heart isn't technically really growing, but to have a feeling in your heart like your heart is growing is that pulsating, okay? That's what you experience in heart coherence. It's that growing, that expanding, it's the energy. And his heart grows 3 sizes and it changes him. And he says, maybe Christmas doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas, perhaps, means a little bit more. That transformation story is so beautiful. And then Family Man. I don't know if you guys are geeking out over movies like I do. I love movies. I love them so much. And I love them for this reason. The idea that you can sit and take them apart or just think about them or, how they affect you. Family Man is one that it's our movie. It's our family Christmas movie. We try to watch it every year. We have so many of the lines memorized. Bum 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 bada bum bum bum. I don't know. If you know the movie, you know what I'm doing. So I love it's this rich man. If you've not seen this movie, watch it this year. It's so good. It's this rich man who gets a glimpse into what his life could have been like if he had his priorities aligned just a little bit differently. And that is really the glimpse that he gets. He gets a glimpse into something different. A life that has family and love in it. And then what that creates in your heart because you are watching that. When you're watching Kate and Jack say, Jack says, I know we could go on with our separate lives and we would be just fine. But I've seen what we can be together and I choose us. Right? That's after he's kind of come out of this opportunity of being able to have a glimpse, being thrown into this life where he has 2 kids and a wife, where he looks in her face and she says, how can you do that? And he says, what? She says, look at me like you haven't seen me every day for the last 13 years. The way that ignites in your own relationship. Man, am I remembering to look at them with that depth, with that appreciation, with that admiration, right? Kate asks him, what are you sure about? And Jack says, I'm sure that right now there's nowhere else I'd rather be than here with you. And it's just a story where it reemphasizes the importance of family. And he's getting that glimpse from the life he chose to the life that he could have. And then at the end, he has an opportunity. So if you haven't seen it, go watch it. If you have, I hope you're like, yes, I love that movie too. It's so good. So yes, another transformation story. And then there's the Santa Claus. And the Santa Claus is a movie about transformation. The story of how Tim Allen is a workaholic businessman and he barely has time for his son that he's co-parenting with his ex-wife, and he's borderline neglectful and they don't entirely trust him. In other words, his ex-wife and her husband don't entirely, even his son doesn't want to be with him. And he has this event where he falls off the roof and fills Santa's shoes. And it becomes this transformation for him. And it's just a story that helps you to see the perspective of transformation. Just plants that little seed of how your life can be a certain way and you can transform. You can gain a much bigger picture when you back out for a minute and you look at things and you go, oh, I've kind of had tunnel vision like that guy. And now what do I want life to look like and be like? The Polar Express is another one of my favorites. And you know how Tom Hanks' voice is actually like 5 different characters? He's the voice of the hero boy, right? The main boy, the hero boy's father, Santa Claus, the train conductor, and the mysterious hobo. He literally has all of those roles. And it's not because they couldn't hire more people, right? They had plenty. They had a big budget. It's because there's a connection between all of those characters in the film. It's the connection that the hero boy can potentially grow up to be like any one of them. In other words, if he continues to be doubtful, he'll end up like the cynical hobo character, right? The guy on the top of the train, like ho, ho, ho. He's kind of like a cynical Santa, like talking about doubt with this boy, representing the doubt and the cynicism, or even like his father, who can't hear the sound of the sleigh bell at the end of the film. Or if he chooses to believe, he's more inclined to end up like the positive train conductor, right? That he's teaching lessons and he's contributing to other people's lives. Or like Santa, who is extremely giving and loving and helpful and is this character, right? That is someone to look up to. So I love the way that they built in that possibility and that deeper layer in the film for you to think about. That one to me is fascinating, that our paths, not so much a look back, but a look forward. Not a look back into like a glimpse of what could have been, but a glimpse into what can be. And I think that that's a beautiful twist on, the Christmas message. I love that the train conductor says, the one thing about trains is it doesn't matter where they're going. What matters is deciding to get on. So beautiful. I also love when Santa says, there's no greater gift than friendship. That to me was like a moment where these 3 people had come together, these 3 kids, and they found friendship in each other, and they realized that they created the best gift. Keep that in mind as you go about receiving this holiday season. And I also love the underlying idea that you can only participate in what you believe in. Do you remember the boy Billy when they get to the location where Santa Claus is? And he's like, Christmas just doesn't work out for me. And then the hero boy says, look, I don't know if Christmas is going to work out for you or not, but it's Christmas Eve. Don't stay here by yourself. We can't participate in something that we don't believe in. That's a really deep one to let sink in and think about. There's literally so much more about that movie that you can dive into about, believing and seeing is believing, and, how many beautiful messages are underlying in that movie. It's an amazing film. And then, I don't know, I say that Family Man is the movie that we watch every year, but It's a Wonderful Life is, I don't know, it's one of my very favorites. I love White Christmas too, but White Christmas has less lessons inside of it. But I love, and I cry every time that I watch It's a Wonderful Life. In the beginning of the film, there's like, you're just seeing like all of these stars in the dark night, and you're hearing conversation. And you're hearing, a conversation that's happening in heaven. And they are saying, there's this guy, his name's George Bailey, and he really needs help. And the angel Clarence says, what's the matter? Is he sick? And the answer is, worse, he's discouraged. And you hear all these prayers being offered up for George Bailey. People know that he's needing help. He's struggling. He's had a lot happen in his life, and it kind of goes through a lot of that happened in his childhood. And then a lot of the sacrifices that he made as he went on living, right? He was the one who stayed home so his brother could go off to college. He was the one who took over, like he was ready to leave, and he took over the bank for his dad. And he believed that they were there so that they wouldn't be taken advantage of by this old man Potter, right? That the town folk, and that people would be able to live a decent life and keep as much money as they could without it, going to a lot of interest. That was the whole idea around his business and his bank and what they could offer in this town. Well, George Bailey gets really down. He gets to the point where he's even suicidal. And man, he's just not himself. He's becoming so bitter. And it's shown so much of the difficulties that he's experienced. And likewise, how short he becomes. He grabs the phone from his wife when she's talking to, one of the kids' teachers, and it's just, goes off like on her and gets upset with her. He says, "It's this old house. I don't know why we all have pneumonia. Drafty old barn of a place. It's like growing up living in a refrigerator. Why do we have to live here in the first place and stay around these measly, crummy old town?" And his wife is so sweet. Mary says, "George, what's wrong?" Right? And he's saying, "You call this a happy family? Why do we have all these kids?" He's just literally having a breakdown. He's short and cynical and bitter. And so he goes to the bridge. He's like attempting suicide. And it's amazing that he has this angel assigned to him. And it comes to be that he gets to have a glimpse into what that town, what life would be like without George Bailey. His angel says, "You've been given a great gift, George, a chance to see what the world would be like without you." Wouldn't that be a pretty incredible thing to see that? To be able to truly see our value? When we deeply resonate with this story, when George Bailey is getting a glimpse, it gives us a tiny glimpse in our heart of what might be different if we weren't here. The angel says, "Strange, isn't it? Each man's life touches so many other lives, and when he isn't around, he leaves an awful hole, doesn't he?" And there's so many people who are actually destitute and not doing well. And, there's the reality of what he sees is very sad to him and very real in his heart. And he has this experience at the end after he's had this glimpse where, he comes back. In other words, people are able to recognize him as George Bailey. They see him, they can talk to him. The angel's not with him anymore, and he's running around the town, and it looks normal to him. And he sees his old car that he had wrecked into the tree, and he's like, "Yes, you old car!" And he just loves everything. He's saying hello to everyone. He runs home, and he's like, "This drafty old house." He loves it. He picks up his kids. He loves them. He's just spewing love everywhere. And the only thing that had changed was his thinking, his awareness, because of the perspective that he was granted. And yes, he was in a mess. He was in a mess financially. There was some things that happened, which if you watch the whole movie or if you know the movie, it's phenomenal in the end when his wife put out an SOS call to all of his friends. And they come and they fill his home, and they bring every last penny they have saved, and they dump it out to save him so that he's not going to jail. That's the part I just start sobbing. He's just surrounded by people that love him, and his friends from out of town, wire money, and his brother shows up. I mean, it is just like this outpouring of love on top of the glimpse that he was able to have. And it becomes an extremely heartwarming movie where when you really resonate with him, you get a glimpse that you do those things, that you're important too, that you make a difference, even when it seems like you don't or you can't see it. just like him. He was so blind to it because all of those negative feelings had crept into his heart. And then remember, it was just hours later, and the only thing that had changed was the way that he was thinking, the way that he was feeling, the new perspective that he had. Another thing that I want to just point out on the heels of that is that his friends came along and helped him. They helped him bail out of the money mess that he was in. But before they bailed him out, he felt different. And he even said, "Isn't it wonderful? I'm going to jail." Okay, he changed inside, and then his outside changed. It's beautiful to continue and keep seeing that. Because when we understand that, it becomes such a motivating and a driving force for us to do whatever it takes to change that inner state so that the things around us can also change. All of these movies, all of these stories, and the stories that I've shared on the short story podcast last week and on the one we're sharing next week, it all comes down to this line that comes from the Polar Express: the true spirit of Christmas lies in your heart. We become reminded that while Christmas is surrounded by glitter and lights and gifts and all of these beautiful things, it's the joy and the love that resides in each individual that creates Christmas. When we keep that state, we are allowing the magic of the season to help us check into our own wake-up calls, figuring out how we can keep Christmas differently, how we can wake up to the way that we've been living and create for ourselves a different reality by showing our brain that it's possible. Just showing your brain the idea that it's possible is the biggest part of transformation. Because once your brain sees that, all of a sudden you're off and you can do it. Through everything from cartoon to modern to black and white, these stories that we surround ourselves with and that we can dive into deeply during the season, we start to see that we can then also allow the idea that it's possible for us to change in whatever way that will allow our heart to change, even growing 3 sizes. So today I'm reminding you to have yourself a merry little Christmas, to let your heart be light, and hoping that you see that you create the Christmas that you want and that you have more power than you think you do when the warmth of Christmas is created in your own heart. I hope you loved that little peek into Christmas. As you're bustling and hurrying, getting the rest of Christmas wrapped up, I truly hope that that sinks deep in for you and that you know that from my heart, I am wishing you a very Merry Christmas. Until next time, my friend.